will now go to Congressman Ed Cates to introduce Dr. Richmond. Congressman Cates, are you with us? And will you just pronounce that national monument for us one more time? Thank you.
And Mr. Soto did a pretty good job, actually, I must say. Thank you, Chair, Ranking Member, colleagues on the committee. I'm honored to introduce to you Dr. Robert Richmond, who is a research professor and director at the Kewalo Marine Laboratory, Pacific Biosciences Research Center of the University of Hawaii at Manoa. I can actually almost see Dr. Richmond's laboratory, which is right on the Pacific Ocean, and a good place to check out if you're ever in Hawaii, by the way, for world-class research and I'm sure an end of the day discussion over the sunset. Dr. Richmond has over 47 years of experience as a coral reef science, has worked closely in the Atlantic, Caribbean, and Pacific Oceans. He was directly involved and has been directly involved with the U.S. Coral Reef Task Force since its inception in 1998, helped draft the original executive order on coral reef conservation in 98, and contributed to the drafting of both the Coral Reef Conservation Act of 2000 and subsequent bills for reauthorization. So that's 50 years worth of work in both coral reef science as well as policy. So we're very fortunate to have him with us here today, and I thank the committee for hearing from him.
Well, thank you very much. Dr. Richmond, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Chairman Huffman, Ranking Members Benson Wasserman, Representative Soto and Case, and committee members. I'll explain from my personal experience over the past 47 years of what I've seen in overwhelming losses to these magnificent ecosystems and to the lives and livelihoods of those who depend on them. When I began my studies in 1974, the reefs where I performed my research had over 70% live coral cover. When I returned to these sites in 2013, these same reefs had less than 5% living cover. My younger colleagues on this trip were thrilled at seeing a few corals and fish. When I got back to my hotel room, I cried. I never would have imagined in my worst nightmare that these unique ecosystems of such natural beauty and of such high economic, ecological, and cultural value could experience such extensive losses during my professional career. I performed my doctoral dissertation research at Enoitak Atoll in 1980 through 82 and saw the massive destruction of reefs caused by the atomic bombs detonated during the nuclear testing programs of the 1950s. The death of corals and coral reefs at sites an ocean away is no less obvious or severe, but has occurred over years and decades rather than a few seconds. Of note, some of the reefs vaporized by atomic testing have shown substantial recovery, while the other reefs I mentioned have not, due to chronic stressors of sedimentation, pollution, overfishing, and repeated coral bleaching events tied to climate change. As a coral reef scientist who works closely with managers, policymakers, and stakeholders, I wish to provide you with a scientifically supported perspective on why passing this bill is so urgent and important. Coral reefs are ecosystems that provide resources of considerable economic, ecological, social, and cultural value. A recent study valued coastal housing and infrastructure protection alone at over $1.8 billion to our country, with annual benefits of over $800 million per year. Our investment in protecting and restoring these reefs should be commensurate. These centers of rich biodiversity, natural products of biomedical application, fisheries resources of economic and subsistence value provide livelihoods supported by reef-related activities, recreation, and tourism, and support cultural practices steeped in traditional ecological knowledge. They are also unfortunately in steep decline in U.S. waters and worldwide due to multiple human-induced disturbances. H.R. 160 provides an essential framework and funds for supporting partnerships among federal agencies, jurisdictional governments, researchers, managers, policymakers, and stakeholders to arrest and reverse the downward trajectory of our precious coral reefs and the benefits they provide to those who depend on them. The state of U.S. coral reefs has worsened since the passage of the Coral Reef Conservation Act of 2000 due to unanticipated levels of stress tied to storms, a major coral disease outbreak, and more frequent and severe coral bleaching events. Yet our understanding of coral reefs, the management tools available, and actionable science supporting responses has improved dramatically. The recent National Academies of Science Committee on Interventions to Increase the Persistence and Resilience of Coral Reefs recommended that restoration activities that accelerate recovery rates need to be enhanced expanded, and broadly implemented at a meaningful scale. Support for this essential work is a cornerstone of the bill, as simply saving what presently remains of our reefs will not result in the desired outcome of leaving a legacy of vital coral reefs for our children, grandchildren, and generations to come. We must act now in moving from science to policy and knowledge to action. As with any legislation, there are some minor changes that can improve H.R. 160. However, extended delays in passing this bill are inadvisable. Time is our worst enemy, and every day lost in responding to the challenge of reversing the downward trajectory of reefs defies the urgency of the situation. I'll end on a positive note. Personally, I'm an optimist, otherwise I can't get out of bed in the morning. Professionally, I'm a pragmatist, otherwise I can't do my job. Coral reefs are threatened, but not doomed, and it's all up to us. Passing this bill would be a major boost for addressing and reversing coral reef decline, and I am optimistic we can succeed with the support and actions included in this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Richmond. Thanks very much. Chair now recognizes Congressman Case for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to all of the witnesses for your expertise and passion. And one observation I have right across the board is that we can all agree at least that our coral reefs are both critical and critically endangered. That's a change from the last 20 years. That wasn't a universal agreement 20 years ago when we started down this path. And so kind of following up on that thought, Dr. Richmond, 47 years of longitudinal experience in coral reefs in both the scientific and the policy side, and you were there at the inception of our modern governmental response, at least at the federal level, some 20 plus years ago. What is the biggest area that you think that we need to tackle policy-wise to adjust to the changes in the scientific side in the last 20 years? I mean, 20 years is a lot of light years in terms of coral reef degradation and climate change, et cetera. What's really changed that the current law is just not handling right now?
Yeah, thank you very much, Congressman Case. That you really hit the nail on the head there. That Dr. Baker and I, as part of this National Academy study, one of the concerns we have is that science advances very quickly and the policy is simply not kept up. And so it's been part of our goal is to really push the science to policy piece and knowledge to action. And when I say knowledge to action, is deep respect for traditional ecological knowledge from the islands where they've been sustainably using their resources for thousands of years. The challenges are unlike anything we've seen before. And as I mentioned, in my 47 years, I've seen things I never would have thought possible. But it all comes down to partnerships, being able to work closely between the scientific community, the management community, policymakers, and stakeholders to be able to not only come to a consensus on what the key issues are, but what everyone has to offer to the solutions. And it's really about implementation. That's what I think is so urgent about this bill, is it gives us a tool for moving from thoughts to action and into implementation. And that's where some of us, I started with a full head of hair back 47 years ago. It's taken its toll. The bottom line is when we look at where we are and where we could be, the partnerships among those four groups and the ability to move quickly from the best available science to implementation is urgent. And that's why the urgency of this bill. Certainly there's a few things that could be fixed, but it's a solid bill that enables us to move forward. And building these bridges between the policy community, the stakeholders, the scientific community, and the managers is really the way forward to be able to solve this huge problem.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is that aside from some fixes, and we do have time to fix this bill, we don't have to report it out tomorrow, we have a little bit of time. You think that this bill, which I co-sponsored with Congressman Soto's leadership, does catch us up, generally catch us up policy-wise, because it focuses on providing a policy framework for the partnerships that are needed in order to pull this off. Is that about right?
Absolutely. I think, again, you're right on target that this bill has so much to love in it, that it's one of these things that I've even had this discussion with some of the policymakers about sections that are a little bit vague versus prescriptive. And that's actually a good thing, because the partnerships that have evolved with NOAA, Department of Interior, and the island jurisdictions have allowed that flexibility to be a good thing. Sometimes having things so prescriptive ties your hands. If it's too vague, you can get mission creep. But I really think this is a great balance. And the one issue that people have come up with is the waivers and the matching issue, which is really important for the territories and commonwealths. There are 6 different places where you can find it in the bill. I've been through this bill a bunch of times, word by word, sentence by sentence. I have a list of those. There's nothing there that can't be fixed with a very little bit of tweaking the language, and that shouldn't take more than a day of staff to be able to do that.
Okay, and let me switch gears a little bit in my remaining time. You had a comment in your testimony that expressed concern with the addition of Fisheries Management Council membership to the Coral Reef Task Force. That of course is a subject for this subcommittee in terms of our Magnuson Stevens reauthorization, which we're right in the middle of right now. You made this specific statement in your testimony that you feared that the Fishery Management Council membership was often at odds with the goals of the Coral Reef Task Force. How do you fix that in this bill? Do you want to just not have that membership, or do you want to, put boundaries around it, or what? And my time is almost up, so I might have to get that from you in a written response, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
I'll loan you 30 seconds if that works for Dr. Richmond.
Yes, that's all I have to say. Yes, that it could be fixed very easily by removing this. They haven't been a part in the past, and experience has shown us that the task force operates very well with the constituencies and the membership that's there already.
Okay, thank you very much. 28 seconds, not bad.
Thank you.